没有，好像不是，应该是吧。
All right, I'm going to give it a few more minutes and then we'll just go get started. Anybody else can catch it on video. Is that kind of set up and you're comfortable with the way it's working?
Hmm?
Is that set up and you're
Yes,
comfortable with the way
yes,
it's working?
recording.
All right. Cool. How many of you guys, this is your first semester here? Cool. Just before we start this formally, just to give them a little bit of time. You guys feel like you're getting pretty well acclimated to the program? Feel like you're kind of getting your feet steady underneath you? Come on in, man. We're all waiting for you to get here. Sorry. Cool. Well, I tell you what, it's 5 after, I'm going to go ahead and get started. First of all, I wanted to just kind of mention why we're doing this and why we're doing the 1 week walk back. I want to start by just kind of dispelling something or being really clear on something. Rube Johnston is probably one of the most laid back graders that I've ever worked with. So what I would tell you is his objective and my objective is making sure that people understand the material. And if that objective is met, then you should never have to worry about your grade. So I know we kind of recocked this assignment, but I don't want people to be sitting there going, oh God, I'm going to flunk my first class or something like that. That's not what this is about. What this is really about is we started to get into grading and we started to take a look at some of the deliverable sections, and we realized that there were several instances, in fact it was pretty widespread, where my reading of the deliverables was not, hey, somebody did this but didn't do a good job on it. It was somebody wasn't quite sure what we wanted in that section. So that was the point where we just kind of decided, all right, let's just kind of recock a little bit, clarify what we're looking for, and then have people just kind of re-execute it. The sense that I have is, based on the work that I've seen, is that most of what you're going to have to do is just kind of reorganize some of the same information. I don't want you to think that this is going to be like, oh gosh, I've got to redo this assignment all over. I don't think that'll be the case. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through just step by step, and I'm going to show you really about 3 things. I'm going to show you what he's looking for in the assignment. I'm going to explain things a little bit. I'm going to show you how that assignment sheet works. I'm going to show you an example of my work on this project from last year. And I got a pretty good grade on it, and I'll even show you the areas where I was weak, or my partner and I were weak on this assignment and it could be improved. And then I'm also going to show you basically how I grade it. So you should come out of here with you should come out of this evening with a very clear understanding of how to do it, what right looks like, and you should also be able to almost pretty well grade your own assignment as you're turning it in. So there should be nobody going, hey, I thought I did A work and I got a B. It should be, you should know based on what you did, hey, this is how I get an A. It's almost like a cookbook. This is the result you want, this is how you get it, this is what it's going to look like. So to start off with, the purpose of this assignment. This is in the notes, but what I'll tell you is that the purpose of this assignment is to teach you threat modeling. And threat modeling, when you boil it down, is nothing more than an organized search for where vulnerabilities are likely to be in code. So that's what we want you to get out of it, is at the end of this assignment, we want you to have done this in such a way that a year from now, you could get a first job where you're looking at doing threat modeling and reference what you did in this assignment and go, okay, this is a model for how I can deliver a threat modeling product for somebody else. This image comes directly out of the notes, where it talks about identifying assets, creating architecture, decompose the application, identify, document, rate the threats. And I'm just adding a little bit on the end of it, or on the beginning and the end, some good prep work and what we want out of you at the end. So to start with, the process that I would use to execute this assignment. We've got some guys that used a web browser. Some people did a database backend. Somebody did a content management system for a web application. With all of those software product types, there has been threat research done previously either on that exact product or on that type of product. And the first thing that I would do before you downloaded a single bit of code is I would go look at that. Because that is going to be one that is going to be some of your best references, and it's going to give you some really good starting points for where you're going to look at the code. So for example, if I had a web browser, we all know about web browser-based vulnerabilities that the industry has seen before. I would go out and I would read 3 or 4 good articles on types of web browser vulnerabilities, maybe discuss some specific ones. If the product that you are using has had a vulnerability before, go read up on that. And just familiarize yourself with, hey, these are the kind of results that I should see at the end of this. What I'm putting up there is a cursory examination of code. So what we're not expecting is for you to exhaustively read 20,000 lines of code in a product. What I would do is download that particular software, build it, take a look through the source code, and get a pretty good idea of where major functions are in the code. So if you've got a browser, you should be finding a rendering engine. You know, where does it do its web requests? How does it store its information locally? How does it collect and store credentials for the users? So be familiar enough with the code that you could answer the question, hey, where would I find those functions in the code? But we don't need you to be pouring for hours through the code going, well, we think that they're handling this function a little bit wrong. That's not what we're looking for. So again, read, do a cursory examination of the code, identify the assets. Who can give me a good working definition of what an asset is?
Anything that you would want to protect.
Perfect. He's even got this, and again, that if you read the assignment sheet that he's got, he makes that assignment sheet almost into a cookbook. In fact, when we were doing our project, we treated that assignment sheet like a cookbook. So again, it's what you're protecting, it's data. So we need you to identify that and then just give me a little statement, not just a bulleted list, hey, I've got data, I've got whatever. But say, all right, I'm protecting this, and this is why I think it's an asset, or this is, tell me a little bit about that asset. So I wanted to ask just to kind of frame the question, is data an asset? Yes.
Depends.
Yes. What I'm looking for is don't just give me data. Give me what kind of data. Give me a statement that says why it's important that you protect that data. Is a network an asset?
Yes.
Maybe. Okay. And then this is something that I want you to know about the way we're going to grade this is I'm not going to get into a heated debate as to whether or not a network is an asset. What I'm looking for on that assignment is if you want to call a network an asset, tell me why you think it's an asset. Go back to that definition and say, hey, this software protects the network or is compromised if that network is not available or in other words, and I'll tell you that's the guideline that I'm going to use on a lot of different elements within these deliverables. I'm not going to argue with you as to whether it's this function or that function, that actually makes a request. You tell me what you got, you give me the explanation, the description of why you think that meets that definition, and if then I can see where you're going with it, we're going to be as generous as you can. Take a look here. This is the grading matrix. Literally all I'm doing is I'm checking off the box here going, hey, can I tell which product you're working on? Can I tell that you've identified an asset? How many assets do you need? I'm checking that you've got one. So if you want to identify more than that, that's great. But I don't need 15 of them. I just need, hey, show me what you got in terms of one asset. Create the architecture overview, and I want to kind of go through this kind of stepwise. There's a couple facets of this. I think there was an example that he threw into the assignment sheet that wasn't quite what we were looking for, but just kind of. Does everybody know what lorem ipsum is? It's filler text. So there was that threat model that he threw in there, the picture that he had there, is kind of filler text of what it'll look like, but it didn't show enough detail. And I'll show you basically what I'm looking for. What I'm looking for in that application is, number one, it should show the assets in some detail on there. The other thing is you're going to see nodes within that diagram, and think of those nodes as the actors within the diagram. So you might have a node that might be, let's see, in a web browser. You might have a security subsystem checking passwords. You might have a request parser, a response, something that parses and displays the website. You might have something that makes a request from the local data cache. But show me kind of the nodes that are within there ought to be the actors that are within that program and that process. Now, you can go a little bit outside the software that you're dealing with specifically. So if you're doing like a web browser, you can show, in fact, I want you to show, hey, I've got the user here. I've got the operating system over here. I've got the web server over here. I've got the network here. And the reason why I want you to show those is because I want you to be able to say, hey, there's a trust boundary here, and this is why we trust something here and don't trust something there. So again, talking about that web browser for just a second. Should a web browser trust everything that a user puts into the URL bar? What do you guys think? Yes, sort of, not really.
I mean, there should be some sort of validation.
Right. So exactly. So we're not validating against malicious intent, but it's not going to send out a request unless that's a properly formed URL. Should the operating system trust every request that comes, or let me put it this way: should the web browser trust every HTML document that it gets in response to a request.
Again, after some validation.
Well,
Sanity check.
there's a couple things that it needs to do. One, it needs to make sure that it's valid formatted HTML that it can display. But what if there's active content now? What if it's got JavaScript in it? What if it's saying, hey, as part of this JavaScript, go get this file off the operating system and then send it back. So you want to figure out within that diagram who trusts who and why. You need if you're going to put a trust boundary in there, that I don't need you to spell it out, but there needs to be some kind of logic in there that says there should be a very valid reason why anything inside of that trust boundary is trusted, and a valid reason or a process as to why we don't trust something out there. So like I said, should I request should I trust every document coming back? Heck no. Should that web server trust every request coming in? Obviously not. All right, how I'm going to grade this, and I'm not sure if you guys can see that well. I'm going to switch documents for just a second, and give me just a second. I'm going to pull up the actual grading sheet that I'm using, and we'll walk through that. Sorry, old eyes don't always see everything. All right, so again, the first thing that I'm going to be looking for is down here in the second box. I'm looking at, okay, do you have at least one data store? At least that's probably going to be one of your assets. You have an external interactor, so again, using that web browser motif. We've got an external actor with the web browser. We've got with the web server. We've got an external actor with the user. 3 generic processes. What I'm looking for is in that threat modeling software, it uses those yellow boxes. What I want in those yellow boxes is tell me what it's doing. Don't tell me the technology you're using. Like I don't need to see HTTPS or I saw one that was using binary or something like that. I want you to tell me in 2 or 3 words what's the function that's being accomplished. Does that make sense? What are we really doing? The nodes, again, think of those as the actors. And then let me get back. Yeah. So just to back up for just a second. This is what I put. I did the Epiphany web browser. And so again, all I'm giving over here is I don't need 5, you could give me 1, that's all he's asking for. But I gave several examples of what the asset was and a description of what that asset was protecting and how it met that definition. When we get into system functions, there's about 2 different ways to do this. One, if you want, you can drill all the way down to the source code level. And tell me the actual function name that's in there, and then describe what it does. You don't have to get that low level. If you want to just use your function descriptions out of the threat model, that's sufficient. But again, give me about 15 of those functions that the software is performing, and give me a little description of what it's actually doing. Back over here. Decompose the application. This is again, I want to see the trust boundaries. I want to see the generic data flow in terms of, okay, I've got a request coming here, I've got a response coming here. You know, where are those external actors and entry points? So, you know, show me where the user's interacting with it, show me where the network's interacting with it, show me where the operating system is interacting with it. The security profile. So, on the assignment sheet, let me see if I can pull this up here. On the assignment sheet, he copies this right out of the Meyer document. He lists some really great questions. What I want to see is not the questions that apply, but the answers to the questions. So there were a lot of people, and I saw this on several people, where they'd say, okay, for input validation, and I think what they did was they just copied this box and they deleted the questions that didn't apply. Okay, what I'm looking for is, you know, for input validation, is all user input validated? I don't know. Take a look at that application and answer that question in there. I don't need a paragraph. I just need a sentence or two that says, hey, input validation is handled at these points. Could an attacker inject commands or malicious data into the application? Give me a one-sentence scenario where you think he could. Give me a one-sentence scenario where you think he could. Yes?
So you should put answer there, not question there.
Right. So these are the questions that you should address. Does that make sense? And again, I'll show you an example of where we did this on this. Again, our threat model was a little weak. Okay. But this is how we did that security profile. I took the list of questions that they had and threw in a few other ones. And I just went through them, and literally all I was doing is I was reading that question. If I thought it applied, we answered it. If we didn't think that question applied, we skipped it. So, like for input validation, user inputs such as URLs are validated locally for format only, and DNS and remote web servers for validity. All user input is implicitly trusted if properly formatted. So, will the browser stop you from doing SQL injection? Nope. As long as it's properly formatted. And again, what I'm looking for is for you to address all or most of these major sections and address 2 or 3 questions per section in there. All right, identifying the threats. There's a couple different ways that we want you to get after it. You can use the stride approach, attack trees, and then the one that I think shows a lot of thought is the attack patterns. But what we're looking for out of that is not just, hey, I found an attack pattern, I'm going to throw it in there. We want you to tailor it. In other words, you can take SQL injection as an attack pattern, but I want you to describe how that works, how that, you know, if you're looking at a database system, I want you to describe how that relational database management system could be vulnerable to SQL injection, and then talk through the mitigation. So let me show you a couple that we did. And again, what we're looking, there's some of this stuff that if you get back into the reading, there's some of this stuff that you go, wow, that's the attack pattern that I want, that's the attack tree that I want. There should never be a situation where you're cutting and pasting something in there, dropping it and leaving it. If you want to use one of these things as a model, that's cool, but I want to see some thought and effort where we're on your attack tree. You're showing that logical process of, hey, I'm starting here, these are the techniques, these are the assets that I'm going after. With your attack patterns. So I've got roughly the same educational background that you do. I can tell the difference between science and science fiction most days. But what I'm looking for in this is give me a meaningful goal. And again, I'm looking for, you know, just a sentence. Give me the precondition. The precondition is, hey, I'm starting with these assumptions, or I'm starting with this level of access. And my post condition is, hey, as a result of this attack, I've gained this. I've got privileged access on the database system. I've managed to produce a shell on a server. I've managed to compromise the browser to where I can read local files arbitrarily. On the attack, again, what I'm looking for is not one or two buzzwords, SQL injection. What I'm looking for is, hey, use sentences and walk me through how would you conduct this attack. I don't need it in painstaking detail, but I need it in enough detail that I go, okay, start with this, do this, do this, do this, do this, and I should get this result. Does that make sense? So give me sentences on that. With the, I think for our project, we did like three or four attack patterns and one or two strides. So again, what I'm looking for in the stride is give me some tailoring. It's totally okay for you to start with another one as a model, but I want you to tailor it in how it applies to your particular project. You don't have to, yeah, I've got a reference in there. You don't have to give me references in this document unless it's cool. So that brings up another point. I'm a human being. I'm going to be reading 15 of these papers. Show me that you know the stuff, and ideally show me what you're learning out of it, because I'm personally very interested in this field. So if it's a reference, if it's a cool idea, if it's a cool article, throw me a link on it, and I'd like to take a look at that. Where else? Identify threats, document threats. Ideally, your threat documentation should nest with your, threat documentation should nest with either your stride threats or your attack patterns. With this, you can be a little briefer on the attack techniques. Reference one of your patterns or one of your stride models. I'm not going to beat people up over whether something is high, low, or medium risk, but just kind of give it, some justification in there. And then again, give me some kind of meaningful mitigation or countermeasure. Any questions about what we've covered so far? Yes?
In the grading rubric for security profile, it mentions like if you have 15 or more elements, then you get 100%. So what elements are those exactly?
What those elements are is these security elements down the side.
So like input validation is one element, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right. And then I don't need all of this, but just give me, a good 2 or 3 points of, hey, this is the question that I addressed and how it's relevant.
Okay.
And again, he gives you a good 15 in the notes. So if those apply to your product, feel free to use those. If you want to add different ones, I'm not checking these against a list. I'm just checking logical flow. Can I see a security concern? Can I see a relevant justification over on the side? Okay. Threat modeling. So yes.
So are we supposed to make sure that the threat is actually valid, or can we just assume that?
So this is where we're giving you guys a little bit of liberty. So in other words, I'm not asking you to find, unique validated vulnerabilities that, hey, like with ours, we knew there was a vulnerability in there before we even started. So we gave them something that says, hey, this is a valid technique that we validated does work, and we even said, hey, I've got an attack script that'll work. You don't necessarily need to do that. Although if you throw that in there, I think it's really cool. But what we do need you to do is go, okay, we're doing this in kind of a notional way, it needs to be something that's valid for that product type. So, you know, SQL injection, could that be used on a content management system? Yeah, give me something that backs that up. You know, if somebody's doing an attack against, like one of the ones we had in here was what's called a watering hole attack on a browser. Most browsers, not all, but most implicitly trust the person who's behind the keyboard. So what that means is you might save passwords, bookmarks, your web browsing history, session cookies, and it all gets stored into a SQLite database that the browser accesses. All right, so a watering hole attack would be like, hey, I walk out of this room, leave my laptop in and plugged in for about 5 minutes, screen's unlocked, you know, I'm just gone long enough to go down the hallway, come back in about 5 minutes, and that's enough time for somebody to take a thumb drive, mount it onto the side of the computer and go, okay, I want to get everything in this directory where the browser stores its credentials. I grab all those SQLite databases, I throw them on my thumb drive, I walk off, and now because the browser implicitly trusts whoever's at the desk or whoever's behind the keyboard, they're going to allow those files to be captured. There's typically no inherent security on the files themselves. And anybody else who's now opening those up with the same product on another machine could have full access. Well, that's a really valid attack that'll hit, well, I mean, I've done it on Firefox, I've done it on Google, I've found out you can do it on Epiphany. I think somebody here's doing, I think Conqueror, or somebody else was using some other browser. I mean, that's a valid attack profile that you can put in there. So, the executive summary. I want to talk about what I'm going to do, what I'm looking for, what he's looking for, and I also want you to know how I'm actually going to grade this thing. So first of all, this is a 2 or 3 page document that you're saying this is what we learned out of this product, or out of this project, and these are our results. So it should answer 2 questions. One, it should explain how you did the threat modeling on there. What I'm looking for is not, hey, this is an explanation of what threat modeling is. What I'm looking for is, this is how we did it. Does that make sense? I've got a section in here on why I thought Epiphany was a good browser to do this research project on. You can give me that if you want. You don't have to. But the thing that I want you to notice on this is, let me go back to the actual assignment sheet. He actually breaks out exactly what he's looking for. Now, I'll give you a hint about every assignment sheet in this course. He goes into a lot of detail. I mean, there's definitions in here, there's examples, there's the process. What I'll tell you is in this course, you can almost use these homework sheets like a cookbook. Like if he talks about the, what's the term they use for the task breakdown, who and what project, who's doing what tasks in the project. Literally what we did to build our project backlog was I copied just about the entire assignment sheet, broke it up into paragraphs, put it in an Excel spreadsheet and said, all right, Josh, you're doing this one, I'm doing this one, Matt, you're doing this one. And it's got enough detail that it's like, all right, cool crap, I've got to identify assets. What's an asset? All right, I've got that right there. The reason why I bring that up is, let's see if I can find the part on the executive summary.
Oh, it's right on the
Yeah.
It's before the
Yeah. Lost in the sauce here. All right, this paragraph right here. Overview of the project, project goals, project execution highlights, what was performed, what goals were accomplished, and what was learned. Folks, he's giving you an outline for your exam. I would break your exam into those sections. If you've got all of those answered in there, That's what we're looking for. I saw a couple of them where one was a complete technical analysis of how the software worked, but no discussion of threat modeling, and no discussion of what your results were. Again, your results in this can be notional. It's really cool if your investigation actually finds something that's practical. How I'm going to grade this. One, assume that I'm interested in your project. Assume that I'm reading to become educated about something that you learned. The way we approached it is, hey, like for the Epiphany web browser, it's a fairly small development team. I'll bet you they don't have somebody on that team that's dedicated to security. So we didn't send this to them, but we wrote it like as if we could. Does that make sense? So we wrote this in like, hey, this is where you guys should potentially look for your vulnerabilities. And oh, by the way, if you're an attacker, this is a potential vulnerability that you could exploit. So the way I'm going to read this thing is the first thing I'm going to do when I pick this thing up is I promise you I'm not looking at word count. The first thing that I'm going to look at is your figures. So he makes a statement in there that your figures should be able to tell the story. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip all the text and I'm going to look at just the pictures and just the boxes. Kind of like you'd read a magazine article. I don't know, is this thing interesting? Oh, all right, that caught my attention. So just from those figures alone, I should get a pretty good sense of what you set out to do, how you did it, what your results were, and did you accomplish your goals and learning objectives. And I should be able to do that without reading anything but the figures. All right, next I'm going to come through and I'm going to read this thing start to finish. I'm going to read every word you write. Don't make that painful for me. I'm going to read the whole thing. And again, I'm going to take a look at those sections that he's got detailed in there, and I'm going to, hey, did you answer the basic question on how this works? When I'm going through your methodology, I want to see you tell me how you attempted each one of these steps in there. Now here's the thing that I want to, I had a great conversation with a dude who's in this class where he explained why a lot of people struggle with plagiarism. He explained to me that in his undergrad, plagiarism was never an issue because if the code compiled, they didn't check to find out if it was on Stack Overflow. If the text roughly made sense, they never ran anything on it to figure out if it was original. So what I'll tell you is my goal is not to catch everybody if they're doing plagiarism. What my goal is I want you to give me your original thoughts on this subject. So yes, what I would take out of that is, I think all of you guys got the turn it in report back. I would take that as a friendly warning shot. Okay? We're not going to beat you up real bad about it on this assignment, but you've had your fair warning. So we're going to use two methods to go after plagiarism. One, again, I'm not going after plagiarism for its own sense. I'm going after plagiarism only because I want to validate that you know the material and that you've accomplished some valid results. But in the future, I would expect him to be pretty rough because you've had that one fair warning shot. So one, we're going to be using turn it in, and two, hey, guess what? I don't mean anything unkind about the people that are in this room. I understand that for most of you, English is a second language, and I'm fine with that. That's cool. You guys have spent 10 or 15 years learning my language. I'm not going to beat you up over spelling mistakes. If I can understand the content that you've got in there, we're good. But here's the thing. If we suddenly shift from something that I can identify as your writing style to something that smells and sounds like it came out of an instruction manual or out of a product manual, I don't need to throw it in to turn it in. You've piqued my curiosity. Now, if it's really, really relevant, throw it in quotes, give it a citation at the bottom, and we're cool. That's all I need. Somebody told me a story about, hey, well, we evade Turnitin by, we're gonna capture a screenshot of that text and throw it in there as an image. That way Turnitin can't analyze it. I'm a human being, I'm pretty good at this. And again, you know, if it's relevant, you want to copy it from somewhere else, throw a citation in there, and we're good. If you want to try and fake me out, I'm telling you, okay, we can play that game. I'll win. But again, all I'm looking for out of that is show me the original thought, show me that you got some good results, and I'm never going to beat you up on spelling. And the other thing I'm not going to beat you up on is let me tell you how I do references when I'm reading it. If you're using somebody else's work, cite it. And what that citation, endnote or footnote needs to be is enough that I can say, aha, you're referencing that this is somebody else's work. I can tell a little bit about it, and oh, by the way, I should be able to find that reference. If it's online, give me a link. If it's not online, it should be in close enough to MLA or APA format that I should be able to find it using the same resources that you used to find it in the first place. Okay? It should also have some relevance to what you're talking about in the text. So what I'm looking for is, as I'm going through your text, you bring up something, you want to cite it, you want to reference it, give me something in line. It could be either the, I can't remember the name of the style, but it could be either like author and you know, page number or something like that, and I can find that, or Microsoft Word does a really great thing where you can do, you know, the way I do it is I just go references, insert endnote or footnote, and then when I'm building the paper, I'll just put like the name of the paper down there. And then here's the other thing. I'm not going to beat you up about this, but I'll show you an easy trick to get this right every single time. I find a paper that I want to reference, I put the little inline citation, I put the name of it down there, and then the last thing that I'm going to do on that paper is I'm going to go to, there's a couple different websites that'll do this. I don't memorize APA format. I don't memorize MLA. And I don't expect you to either. But what a very professional way to do this is take the document that you want to source, go to either RefWorks, which you have free access to through the library, or another good one for smaller projects like this is called Cite This For Me. And both of them will give you a little, if it's a link, you just drop in the URL and it'll go out there and it'll grab all the material that it needs and goes, hey, did I get the author right? Did I get the title right? And you just click it and it drops it in there and now it's perfectly formatted. Okay? That's the easy way to do this just really well.
What's it called again? RefWorks?
What's that?
RefWorks, is that what you said?
Yeah, RefWorks, that's the one that's on the library, and the other one is Cite This For Me. That's the one that I use. I've heard great things about RefWorks. I've never used it because you know most of what I've worked here is smaller projects. But again, the things that I would not do is, hey, if you're using somebody else's work, cite it. Cite it in some way that I can find it. And the other thing is, you know, every once in a while you get somebody who's like, man, I'm just going to throw a bullshit source in there. They'll never find it, so they'll give up trying. Here's one. If your project is cool, I want to read your sources because I want to read them. If you're referencing something, you should count on at some point, I'm going to go look at it and I want to read that source. And if you've got a link there, that's great. Now I can read it. If you don't have a link there and you've got it in some other format, I should be able to find it through Sheridan Library. If I can't find it online and I can't find it in whatever format you're going to do, I'm going to go to Sue Vazakis. There's the librarian and go, hey, I'm going ahead of this stuff. This is the citation they gave me. It sounds like a cool paper. Can you help me find it? If I can't find it, and Sue Vazakis can't find it, how the hell did you find it? You know, help me out here, guys. So again, I'm going to start with your figures. I'm going to take a look at your references. What I'll tell you is, citing the textbook is cool. citing the project paper, or the project site, like if you're doing SQLite, or Midori, or Conquer, or something, you know, citing something out of that project website is cool. But what I'm really looking for is about 3 to 5 sources, ideally including something that's not one of those two. So give me an article about web browser vulnerabilities. Give me an article about SQL injection. Give me an article about some vulnerability that's common to your particular type of software or a particular vulnerability that you think is there. And if you've got 3 to 5 of those, that's where I'm going to give full credit rather than, you know, one reference that references a definition of asset in the textbook. Does that make sense? All right, cool. Again, when I'm reading through this, I promise you the things that I'm never going to do is check word count, because I'm just not going to. 2 or 3 pages is enough to adequately cover this, and I'm not going to beat you up about this. The other thing I'm never going to do is I'm never going to beat you up about stuff like grammar and spelling. Again, my assumption is you guys have already more than met me halfway on the language business. So as long as your writing is clear enough that I can understand what you're saying and the content's good, we're cool. Does that make sense? So I want you guys to walk out of here tonight with a clear understanding of what we're looking for, how to do it right, and I'll be honest with you, every time we turned in a paper, we knew we were going to get an A. Because you've given us that pathway to success and we followed it. Yes?
Quick question. So I was just reading through your abstract. So, I mean, I kind of understand what you've written there. So you basically kind of summarize the entire project in like a paragraph, right?
Yeah.
So what I wanted to know is, would an abstract work if it describes what the motive of the project was rather than summarizing what the project did?
So your abstract ought to encompass 2 to 3 pages in about 3 to 5 sentences.
Right.
So if your motive is that key of an issue, throw it in there.
Okay.
What I would rather you do is give me, hey, this is what we did, these were our results, and if there's some other key finding, throw that into the abstract. And then your personal motive, like hey, one of the things that I actually put one of my motivations in here. So my last job, I came from an organization where we thought we ought to have more access to capabilities than other people were willing to give us. And so I was personally motivated looking at a web browser to find an actual vulnerability that I thought a guy who wasn't a grad student could accomplish in an austere environment out in the field. And it was like, hey, I'm now going to give this dude a technique. If you've got a motive, or if you've got a way of looking at that that's that level of cool, throw it in there, man. Because if you think it's cool, I'm going to think it's cool too. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. Does anybody have any questions? Does everybody have like a really good feel on how to approach this?
And also, I wanted to know, because the last time I kind of screwed up my submission because I kind of basically by mistake I submitted a draft copy of my final submission. Okay. So what I did was I had to send out an email to Rube and yourself and Ritvik. So that was the problem. The reason why I did that was because I was not able to resubmit my assignment to Blackboard.
Okay.
So
I've got some really good news for you.
Okay.
Your professor and both your CAs are human beings, relatively, I think, good people. So yeah, get that thing in by the deadline. By the way, please do throw your TM7 file, your threat modeling file, in there as well, because that kind of helps us expand things and
Sure.
look at it, play with it a little bit. And yeah, this project may seem a little dry, but I'm telling you, if you get into it, it should be something that you genuinely have a lot of fun with.
So right now, just the thing that if we have to resubmit this, we can just send an email to you in case you're not.
Dude, I'm a human being.
Sure.
Like, don't bullshit a bullshitter, but
Yeah.
right. My dog died, but I only had one dog, right?
Okay.
You know what I mean? Hey, one other thing on office hours. So here's my thing on office hours. So some of you guys who know me know that I'm like almost always on campus. Some of you guys have been to my house. I've got 7 kids. I cannot study at my house. So when I'm home, and when I'm here, I'm all here. And the reason why I'm in this program is because I think that what we study is ridiculously cool. And I'm CAing this course. Trust me, I don't need the money. I'm CAing this course because I think the subject material is cool. So I'm going to make you an offer that you ought to accept, which is I don't have posted office hours. What I have is at the bottom of every one of my emails, you've got my schedule. So I'm rarely here before 9:30 in the morning. And at some point, I'm going to go home and kiss my wife and play with my kids. Other than that, if I'm not in class, you tell me when's good for you to meet, and I'll meet with you. Now, I typically hang out when I'm not in class in 1 of 2 places. Either Malone 239, or sometimes I'm over here in the reading room in Gilman. But either way, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you'll see my schedule is wide open. And I'm totally cool with somebody finding me outside of, whenever you thought I was posting office hours and going, hey, you got 15 or 20 minutes to work through something. I'm really okay with somebody coming up with a draft submission that they're 80% done on and going, hey, this is what we think is a good attack pattern. What do you think of it? And I'll look at it and go, yeah, that's enough detail. No, I need a little bit something more, or this is where I would change it. My objective is 1, I genuinely enjoy this kind of work. 2, I get off on do you guys know what I mean by the light bulb that comes on? Okay. So the 2 most addictive experiences that I've ever had, the second most cool experience is when the light bulb comes on in my head. And the first, the most exciting experience that I get to have in life, or at least that I'm willing to discuss in this forum, is watching that light bulb come off on somebody else's head. When I watch you go, oh man, that's cool, I just figured this shit out. Okay? So what that means is, hey, carte blanche. Yes, I've got my own studying, but if you're working on something and need some help, come find me. All right? Any questions? Everybody give me like a thumbs up, thumbs down, or I don't know. All right, there we go. Cool.